I will tell you the trick with generative tones. I didn't prescribe a rhythmic pattern for them, they sound in a rather chaotic way while adhering to a given rhythm. How do they manage it? Here is the first important to add a sampler, or simply drag the finished audio loop to the MIDI track. As a rule, I look at all these samples in different packs. Next we switch to slice mode, so that the program slices the sample into small audio fragments, which will then be played chaotically. In this case, you can choose whether the slicing will be done by transients, by beats, or in other ways. I personally like transients, but no one bothers to experiment. Then an arpeggiator is placed on the channel, and here it's already necessary to understand the principle. If we don't change anything in the arpeggiator and write a certain note in the MIDI clip, then it will play only one sample. And so, just so that randomness and generativity rise, it's important to automate some of these parameters: rate, steps, or distance. And also in the MIDI clip you need to draw different notes. I like how it sounds if only the rate automated. Steps and distance I set to these values. And here how it sounds good with the help of the LFO. You can additionally automate steps or distance. Here is that one notes of different octaves begin to be played. And if each note in this case corresponds to some of the sliced parts of the loop, then it turns out that these parts begin a generative game. This is not necessary everywhere, but sometimes on the contrary it turns out to be interesting with them. Try to create your own settings too. And we also have equalization and two equalizers for more precise adjustment. And the gain is slightly increased. Now look, in order to diversify the drawing even more, I have drawn different notes in MIDI clips. Let me remind you that these notes correspond to different parts of the sliced loop. Then in fact the percussion generation begins with different slices, and it turns out to be a fairly large variation of percussion game. So that is clear. Here I click on different notes and they correspond to one or another slice of the sample. And thus, drawings of different notes, with the help of generativity, reproduce different drum patterns, which is interesting and easily applicable. This is story with generative tones, which lessons from Spectral Audio School helped me tell. I will leave a link to the channel of the school in the description. See you next lesson, bye bye! Saddened, Max began sorting through all the instruments and samples of the world. But everything didn't fit, but only distanced him from the right sound. Then he, in grief, went to refresh himself a little and went to a bar when he decided to drink tinctures from old jazz records. He was served by a grasshopper waiter. And when the grasshopper tried to pass him a drink, he couldn't hold the glass, because he could move only by jumping. And it's hard to keep the liquid in the glass in a jump. Naturally, the tincture was spilled on Max. The angry producer began to express the displeasure, but Grasshopper could only chirp timidly in response. At first, Max didn't attach any importance to this chirping and asked to dismiss the clumsy waiter. The owner of the bar was also not averse, because this grasshopper constantly spilled soups and drinks on visitors. That was the last straw. As a result, the annoyed grasshopper galloped off to be sad in the field, and the angry producer also left the bar. But when in the silence of the evening he heard the sad chirping of a grasshopper coming from the field, he realized that this was exactly the sound that his hit lacked. He ran headlong into the field to look for a grasshopper, but couldn't find him in the field. Then he returned home and went to bed and dreamed of fields and meadows.